I would like you to stand, if you would, please, except Keith, you're good. But Terry,
Oh, I don't be
Kathleen,
sworn in.
and Bill. So if you turn and face Lisa and I, and you're gonna need your oath if you want it. You're gonna repeat after me, but, all right, so raise your right hand, and then when it comes to say your name, say your name, not say your name. Okay? Right. I say your name.
Terrence M. Kelly.
Solemnly swear that I will support and defend
Solemnly swear that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
and the Charter of the Municipality of Anchorage,
the Charter of the Municipality of Anchorage,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the Board of Ethics
the duties of the Board of Ethics
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Congratulations.
So Kelly,
Congratulations,
Kelly, is that
Terry.
the first time you've done that?
And if you all will sign that,
Yeah, that's what I've
Barbara
never seen it
will
done before.
certify it.
So you'd already done it? I have Keith's on file right here. Must have.
Oh, yes.
From 2009.
Well, they gave it to us to sign. I don't
Oh yeah, I
know
remember
that-
signing one of these.
Yeah, we
I didn't
did.
find yours, Terry. I didn't
What?
find David's either. No.
You know, I gave it to Steve. Did he
Oh.
give it to you?
Quit giving things to
Steve's
Steve.
gonna be.
so unreliable.
How long is
He
Steve
really
gonna
is.
be
He's
your
so-
whipping boy? I mean, he's gone now.
He's gone
Well,
now.
he's the perfect whipping boy. He's like, here to defend
absolute
himself,
whipping
right?
boy is the
Absolutely,
perfect
right.
whipping. The empty chair.
Okay, we are.
We are on record.
We are on record.
Wait a minute. This oath of office says 2014.
I'm correcting it.
Oh.
So we'll have to do it all over. again.
Oh. Okay. Well. I missed that. Sorry. It gives me a chance to change it for the other boards that are meeting. Oh. Thanks.
And there's your extra copy of that. All right.
Thank you.
Great. And Bill, I think I took that. There you go. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great meeting.
Thank you.
See you, Barb.
And then we took care of the annual disclosure of present economic interest while we were doing the other. So Keith, if you want to continue beyond that.
We wanted to. Well, we haven't taken care of approving the annual disclosure, or is that later on?
That's later on.
All right, thank you. The next thing on here is to elect the chair and vice chair. I gave notice. Well, typically, we try to do that in the first meetings of the year. And I pretty much told them last month that I would be at least making sure that the elections were going to happen. And I'll go with whatever the wishes of the board is. Since Vice Chair Nesbitt is not here, do we want to, potentially elect somebody to a position that is not here to defend themselves? Or is that the best time to do it?
Move to postpone elections for next meeting.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone the elections till next meeting. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And that's typically all hold, rather than everybody raise their hand. We have had roll call votes, but rarely. Generally, most everything is done like that. Moving on to disclosure forms and our new code letter in B1. It'd be 5B1.
Well, let me say before we go into this, you'll notice that there are colored tabs now, so that we can navigate between the different disclosures. I have to say, look at the number of disclosures we have, and look how many are done on the wrong form, and look how many are still disclosing for the wrong reasons or accepting things over. I just have to say, I don't think the training has penetrated the way that it should.
Do we have our new form though in order
We
by
don't.
this summer, by last summer?
Oh, yes.
We had it ready by last summer when the school district did their training?
Mhm. Yes,
Okay.
we had everything ready. And I think what we're going to have to do now is make sure that we get our letter that we send out ready to go, because a lot of these disclosures, I kept the older ones in it that needed letters because they're still not dealt with. And then you see how, look at the number we've gotten. And we have to go through individually and say, needs a different form, needs a, can't accept, look at this. I hate to bring it to you, but here it is.
So the real issue is how do we get the school district to remind the teachers? Because this to me is probably one thing we learned about the school district for the newer members is that it sounds like the principals sort of operate somewhat independently per school, and that trying to get things done is through the principals. And so maybe it's just a matter of bringing this to someone's attention at the school district. I don't know who that would be. Hess is generally the person.
And we had talked about CCing the superintendent, even when we sent the letter to the principal
Oh, to Ed, okay.
to speak to the employee, and also CCing the superintendent. But we've got to get that letter done, because if we can get that letter done, I can filter these. I can get a lot of these sent back automatically wrong form, and you don't even have to see these until they come in the right way.
And is that letter the very last?
Yes, I've got all the disclosures first because I assumed we needed to go through them one by one to see what the problem is with it. And then the letter draft is at the end of those. It says, mine says draft. They all should be the same. So if we can get, I don't know, maybe that's the most important thing is to get through this letter, because then I could go back through these. If they just need a new form, I could push that out. And then we could bring back the other ones that you all need to discuss for the next meeting.
In that case, why don't we take a look at the letter? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said the letter's the last document.
It's the last, it's after all the disclosures. Well, actually, it's before the goldenrod, after this. I meant to take all the goldenrods out.
You didn't
Okay.
take mine out, it was after the golden rod.
No, oh, it is? Oh,
Yes.
well, I did do
Oh, so
that.
this is it.
You're right.
Oh.
Okay, sorry, I just didn't give me a goldenrod.
Oh, there it is.
The bullets on the second page are not meant to necessarily always, all three would be there. It would depend on what they're violating. I just gave some options of things that we might be sending a letter for.
I guess one of the things that's frustrating to me, and I'm sure to you as well, is that we did give them like a 6-month extension because they needed to do the training. That was and they, apparently the training was not effective.
I think this letter is way too much. And I think it should be very simple, and a restatement to some degree. There's a lot of confusion. Things like, we have changed, or the gift rules have been changed. It's been made much simpler. Look at this thing. Please get this out to your staff that all this kind of stuff is too much, and they're going to just ignore it. I think the important thing, and also again for the new members, what we try to do is say, if you look at the form, which is the third, right after the letter, is that we try to, again, develop all these safe harbors. There's all sorts of stuff. You don't need to do any disclosure in the old code. some stuff needed disclosure, some didn't. It was just sort of confusing, and we said, hey, most things don't even require disclosure, not a problem. And for teachers, you can get them from, you know, the community groups or the PTA. Don't disclose. You don't have to. But then the other gifts get select treatment. So I don't think this conveys the simplicity of the new system to them.
Because of all the code sites and
Yeah,
everything else,
just
there's
too
just too
much.
much government ease.
And I tend to overwrite because I feel like an editor can pull away from it.
It's always easier to take away than
Mhm.
I agree with you. You might could even start on the second page with, you know, Mr. Principal, you're receiving this because.
Yeah.
So they'll know why they're getting it, and then from there, I think you could just sort of mush down those first 2.5 paragraphs and say, you know, you may not be aware of this, but a new form was created because there were some code changes. And this new form makes this much simpler, this process much simpler, and maybe just a couple of little blurbs about, you know, in most instances, reporting isn't even required.
Okay.
I like the link though, that you included the link to the website link.
Well, I would make a suggestion that either Glenda or I meet with you for a half an hour at a machine with the Word version of this and just do it. If you give it to me for homework, it will never get done. It has a good chance with Glenda.
Can I collaborate with you
Yes.
and we'll go back and
If you
forth
want
and
to
I'll.
send it to me electronically, I'll take first crack at
Okay.
it. And then I'll let you take a look at it and we can kind of massage it.
Mhm.
See if we can kind of condense it down a little bit and we'll get another draft.
And then if we can get like an sort of an approved version between the three, like
Yeah,
if I
then
work
I
with
will.
Linda and then get you in on the final,
Uh-huh.
can I go ahead and execute some of these and then bring back the ones that you all need to discuss?
That's right. There's no content problem with this.
No,
whatsoever.
no,
it's
It's
just
making
It's
it-
just a kind of rhetorical
Yeah.
issue. So yeah, if you guys can work something out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for Chairman Keith, but let me speak for Chairman Chief. Go ahead.
I'm not objecting.
And even when I was sitting here and we were going to review it, I just looked at it and go, I don't want to read it. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Who else is going to want to read it,
Give
right?
it to Mikey.
That's right. Okay, so Glenda, you and I will work on that, and we'll get you to approve a final, and then I'll take care of these, and hopefully we'll come back with a slimmer version. I mean, I'm telling you, every time one got put in my inbox, I was like, really? You know, so.
Well, it took us a year to get the gift rewrite through the teachers, which was absolutely favorable to them. And so at least, I mean, hopefully they know there's been a gift rewrite, and so getting to the form seems like another year.
That's right. Because it's our first holiday season
Yeah.
with the new
And
rewrite, right?
I-
So there's going to be a lag.
I see some issues, and I see some ones we shouldn't have seen.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a whole potpourri.
And we've had teachers that received $2,000 in cash gifts, diamond jewelry, airline tickets, anywhere Alaska Airlines flies, and then we typically get the $50 gift card to buy supplies for the school from the PTA, and those are the ones we don't need to see.
Okay, so we'll move on.
4 bottles of scotch.
We gave the Boy Scouts, so it's okay.
Yeah, I kind of wondered why he gave
the
it
Boy
to
Scouts. Wow.
I saw that and I went, the Boy Scouts?
And can I've talked to Mark New about this. He's the chief of police, and other police officers, and you know, of course, for a long time they couldn't accept anything from anybody. And I've said to them that they don't need to file disclosures anymore. If they're not accepting it and just passing it on to another list of charitable groups. Now, that does raise a little bit of an issue, is that they're in control of the choice of who they pass it on to, but it's always a charitable group that I just didn't see any need. And so they were running those through me because, as you know, this thing says if they run it through an ethics officer or the board.
Right.
And I said, well, certainly if you're running it through me, don't stop filing these forms. So they aren't going to file these forms anymore. Maybe I just leave it at that. They contact me and I say fine, because there is some discretion as to whom they pass these on.
Right. I worry, I mean, is there a concern maybe about not having some documentation about what happened to these gifts? so that
Mhm.
word gets out. You know, the people from this business say, "Oh yeah, we gave the chief of police 4 bottles of scotch as a gift."
Mhm.
And someone go, "Oh wow, really?"
Mhm.
Right? And then whatever happened to that scotch? You say,
So-
"Oh well, don't worry, it went off to the Boy Scouts," but there's no documentation that was reviewed and that's what
Mhm.
happened. Then it just sort
Mhm.
of becomes
So
it becomes
it-
a scandal when maybe there really shouldn't be.
In
Yeah.
order to protect the chief of police.
Right.
Mhm. I think you bring up a good point. Because that's a
Even-
public
even-
perception issue.
Yeah.
Write
because-
it up, but take it to an ethics officer, because I think you
It doesn't
all
have to
would
be
like
right.
to hope
So-
that it moves more to the ethics officers than to the board.
So if I send a confirming one-liner, then there's a record of it, and maybe I send that a copy to you, so there's a record of that. Do we need to do anything more? Do you think it should be sent to the givor?
No, I think that would be okay. I mean, I think as long
Just a
as,
confirming
as
one-liner.
long as we have some documentation that an ethics officer or the board reviewed it and that something appropriate happened
Okay.
with the gift.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
it protects the employee that way.
Okay.
I too question Boy Scouts being the recipient of scotch.
Oh, it's for their fundraiser.
Yeah, and if they have a silent auction, and that's,
Okay.
I drank a lot of scotch
you had that merit badge.
Merit badge. Oh, that was the distilling merit badge.
And these disclosures are public documents.
Well, that's interesting, yeah, this is, but if I guess to the extent that I tell them that they don't need to come to the board any longer, then I should do the one-liner confirmation and send a copy to you. Which is
And
easy,
then I will
because I do that all the
print
time. I mean, I do the one-liners to them all the time, so why not just
And I'll
copy
print
you?
it and store it just like I do
Yeah,
a
just copy.
disclosure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think as long as we had some official
Okay.
documentation
That's
that
fair.
the gift was reviewed, and then we're not, that if a scandal emerges, the employee, like maybe this was a high-profile member of the municipality. It's not just their word against accusations that they've been receiving these kind of gifts. There's some documentation that at least an ethics officer reviewed it.
Okay.
So the next thing here, apparently, Dr. Kelly, you wrote a letter to Mr. Miller clarifying his disclosure responsibilities.
Okay, well,
Are we
Keith, that's
skipping
a
all the
different
disclosures?
subject.
Or are we,
That is part of this disclosure.
So for number
We
two,
addressed
I'm sorry.
5B1, and there's no elected officials, so that was the next thing on my agenda.
do you want to look at the disclosures first and make a motion
Oh,
to
I thought
approve
we
them, then we'll
decided-
go into the
I thought
letter?
we decided for the disclosures. Never
Our
mind.
disclosures of present economic interest. You're right. So look at the actual disclosures first,
The-
and then we'll look at the
gift disclosures?
the disclosures of present economic interest. So we're on to B3.
I'm very confused.
Yeah, that's what I was
I've
looking
got more
at,
gift
B,
disclosures.
Yeah, I do too.
B3.
Radical.
Well, are we going to discuss the gift disclosures, or I thought you wanted me to do the letter and then filter out and then bring back the ones that you need to
That's
discuss?
what I thought we decided, so that's the reason I was
Yeah.
moving on.
Oh.
I thought
Yeah.
we were going to do it the other way around. We were going to go through and say, send the letter, send the letter, send the letter. And then
It's up to
the
you.
letter.
It's up to you. But I can do a filter before, you
I
know.
think we do that then. That sounds
Okay,
good. Yeah, I
okay.
don't think anything here is particularly pressing. Okay. All right, so what's next then?
I don't know, you guys tell me. I thought I was following the agenda.
Okay, so we finished the gift disclosures. There are no disclosures from elected officials. And so
Right.
we're on to present economic interest, which
Right,
is your
disclosure
third colorful
forms.
tab.
The present
Okay.
economic interest.
And then maybe approve the forms first, and then we'll talk about the Miller letter.
Oh, I guess what I'm saying, Phil, I was going through 3A here, and I'm looking for the forms here. All right, economic interest, that is these, is that purple?
Perfect.
Good grief.
Well, we kind of asked for this. We have so many because we had, oh, wow.
So this is the new member of the Board of Adjustment, Dwayne Adams.
As I understand it, the Board of Adjustment is the group that takes the appeals by the public members when they don't like how much their house was appraised for.
Well, it's decisions of the Planning and Zoning Commission or Plating Board or Urban Design Commission. Any of those decisions can be appealed, and they're appealed to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, so it's more than just what I, okay.
So these are their clients. These are Mr. Adams' clients.
And Kathleen, because Bill, you may remember this, but quite often there are members of these boards that a reason that they were appointed to the board is because they have expertise in that area. So it's not unusual for us to have people who have clients like this and do that. Just be careful to disclose. This guy's got a bunch of stuff here.
I think if we work out the Miller letter, I think this is a great example of where sort of like a generic letter just reminding this individual of, okay, and if one of these conflicts does come up, then here's how you handle it. This is precisely the kind of case where we should take out a generic letter and send it off to people where we see, oh wow, there's a lot of potential conflicts. Just a reminder of how you're supposed to handle that.
And I am, even though you're approving these disclosures that are going through, I am keeping all the ones that I got this year so that when we do finalize that letter, I'll go back and send out to all of those.
And I'm getting back up to speed. It might be helpful for someone to clarify as we're approving these forms what that action really consists of. So we're acknowledging receipt of the form for the most part, right? What other stamp of approval are we putting on the form by looking at it and saying thumbs up?
Would you like to step in?
Yeah, I think what we're saying is that the disclosure as stated doesn't require any further management, so management of the conflict of interest. If we're concerned about the potential conflict or that it needs to be managed, then we would probably call the person in. So we say that, everybody has conflicts of interest. It's whether they're being managed. So we're looking for that, whether there needs to be any more board action.
Yeah, and then in terms of what's really different, in terms of all the gift disclosures, we got this somewhat nasty letter that we sent to people when when I took over, we were just accepting it. It was like, well, has it been filled out properly? I guess we just accept it. Now we send this letter to people saying, you should not receive this. Is a violation of the code, and if someone were to file a notice against you, and then some folks actually bring them in and talk to us. We've had a couple teachers in where we said, like, what's going? The one who took the airline tickets, what's going on? You just won $1,000 airline tickets from a parent, a parent of a student of yours 2 weeks before final grades, or did you see that there was so we're more proactive now in terms of, like, in these cases, helping people see this is going to have to be managed, or trying to be corrective in terms of people who have already violated the code.
But Bill, I do think you're correct. I mean, these are also sort of public record. They're available at the clerk's office. That somewhere out there, theoretically, the public has access to these as well, just in terms of information to the public. But no, then there have been a handful that we have decided we needed more information, or.
So do we send out a letter
This isn't it, but.
in either instance, whether or not we approve it or disapprove it? I mean, is it still
No,
only if we disapprove
yeah,
it?
only if we have one question. And I think, again, I think most of these disclosures are just required by code, and unless something jumps out at us, and that's why it's important that this letter really explains and includes Bill's question, is, okay, you've disclosed this, now why does it matter? What are we going to do with it? And how do you handle that disclosure at your next board meeting?
And it comes back, we had a case I can't discuss because it was confidential, but it did involve a board member of an organization who had a direct conflict, and it wasn't disclosed.
See, it's no longer confidential because a violation was found.
Was found or wasn't
Yes,
found?
it was found if you're talking about our MRSA board member.
Yes.
no longer
Okay, well, I'm
confidential.
being careful.
Yeah, the people don't matter. It's the
No.
situation.
Yeah, but it was a board member of Alersa who owned a business, and then while he's serving on this board, he is directly appropriating money to his own company.
to do the road improvements.
Yes.
And in one of the board meeting minutes, he is listed as both a board member and a representative of a contractor.
So it got to be pretty nasty, and we actually, the man eventually resigned, but we had asked the assembly to
Terminated.
terminate him. Because
And did we couldn't find his disclosure.
Right.
Right,
We're not sure
so-
he ever did one.
Yeah.
Which
And
is-
Darren started the system that everybody has to do these once a year.
at their first meeting of the year.
And I guess the other assumption is when people hand these in, your staffer has some responsibility to look at them and be aghast. What? I mean, here's a LURSA board. The only function in life is to hire a contractor to do the roads, and that's his company. So that it will, the staffer will say something and bring it to the board, if not someone else.
Of course, then the rub was his company did a great job. So it was a rather difficult, long, protracted discussion or potential violation that we had to work on.
But my recollection, Dee, were you going to review this draft?
I
paper to
was.
see if it was right? Remember, there was
And-
a bunch of stuff that I stuck in it. And
Yeah, and-
part of it's the code, and part of it is probably the way I'd like to see boards handle this situation, right? And I think you were going to check it to see if it.
Well, and it's not. The order really is incorrect. And I was going to say I should just go to Lisa and get the Word version of it. Do you have the Word version, I guess? Okay. So let's read through this.
Everything's on his little.
Let's see. I guess the first thing that sort of concerned me is how, if you believe you have a potential conflict, you should recuse yourself from the matter. I don't think that's true. I think that it's number one is disclosure. You don't have the power to recuse yourself necessarily. And that's difficult because at the assembly level, they disclose, and then the rest of the assembly says, oh, no, you aren't recused. I mean, you must make a decision. We don't want you walking out because you're part of us. So at the assembly level, specifically, the power to recuse oneself is gone.
Well, but I watch Assemblywoman Nabowski get up and leave every time somebody talks about the fire department.
No, she discloses, and then the rest of the assembly votes on it. If the chair doesn't rule, the rest, they vote. And if they say that she has a conflict, she could leave. If they say, no, we don't think you have a conflict, she can't leave.
Okay.
And again, that was a political thing to force assembly people to make hard decisions and not say, oh, I think I have a conflict.
Right.
Okay, so now that's different than boards and commissions.
Yeah, and the
You're
code's
probably not
silent
trying
on
to
that
duck
one.
decisions.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I thought I would reorder it to it's disclosure is the most important thing, as we've all seen. So disclosure first to everybody, then the commission, and I think part of it is that the commission really needs to gather information. I got to figure that out. I did a presentation to the Port Commission about this whole issue, conflicts of interest, just as they were about to raise the tariff. And so one of them would say, well, I'm a shipper, and then they go to the next person, well, what does that mean? You're a shipper. How does that affect your ability to look at the tariff? To try to teach the other board members, you've got to ask a few follow-up questions. How to put that in this letter, I'm not sure.
Who was the commission in this draft?
In this, I don't know if it was anybody.
Tell me
Was it?
who it was, right? Mr. Miller, what board was he?
I don't recall. We have had instances where the issue is where somebody doesn't disclose, even though it's on their economic, maybe in their economic form, but as it comes up, just like you disclosed to us that you have a business relationship with Mr. Evans, it's important that as that come up, that person discloses right then and there, because I don't have all your disclosure forms memorized. Not that they're that difficult, but it's just to keep track of. And we've had some issues where people have, even though they disclosed, and the people come up where we've had the biggest issue is probably where somebody disclosed that it was obvious that they had a conflict. They argued one side of the case and then turned around and went to the other side of the table and voted on it. And
Or we had some nasty. And also, what was happening in that case that people would be disclosing really obvious conflicts of interest, and then if people say, okay, thanks for your disclosure,
Yeah,
and then
move
just move
on.
on.
Right.
Right. And so, and the code is a little quirky right in that moment.
Yeah.
That's why I say part of it's what I'd like to see boards do. But what the letter suggests is that once you disclose that conflict, your board or commission should deliberate on it and vote as to whether it's a substantial conflict or not. And for the information, I try to get that in the language where it says the disclosure should be on the record and be comprehensive enough to allow the commission to make an informed judgment of the nature of the conflict.
And maybe what I can do is look around, see if in any of the ethics material there are some examples of that, some of the questions you might ask.
Good idea.
The assembly has a cheat sheet, I believe, that they're using these days. So again, something a little bit more helpful too about what that means. Because again, the board commissioners, they all disclose their potential conflicts, moved right on. It was same thing. It was like nobody knew whether that was a conflict. And what's interesting about that kind of a commission is some of the boards, in fact, it's designated, we want someone from the shipping industry, and it has to be someone from the administration. And so it's actually built into the code that we want someone for that perspective.
Well,
Okay,
remember
so-
on the attachment of the second half, right?
Yeah, you're going to put it
the
in.
relevant code, right? So that you
Yeah.
have some sense of.
And a question about the routing of these forms. Do they come only to the Board of Ethics, or do they circle back to the chairs of the boards, the persons are
I
serving?
don't think they do they?
They only it comes to us and we file it after review by the board.
And Bill, that's a good point. Maybe.
I wonder if that's not worth considering, which is, you guys will now help police me if I just, since I've disclosed it, the public and informed that if I was on Mr. Miller's commission, I might have no idea what Mr. Miller's. Good idea.
Mhm. So can you make that so?
Mm-hmm.
Just me policy.
If I put a star by it, it will be done.
Oh.
Okay, that's a good idea. So anyway, Dr. Kelly, I think so. Anyway, disclosure, maybe what it is a comprehensive, but provide enough information. And then the commission votes. And I think that's fair. And maybe pointing out that, we're trying to avoid, you're also trying, they vote. And then maybe, do we give some information on what that means? In other words, you can't, if you're not a participating member, you don't sit there and give your opinion and just not vote.
Right.
Or, so maybe a two-line overview. What that really means. I'm a fond advocate of putting this stuff in English where people really can understand, and maybe an example or two, or okay, so I guess that's what we need to do here.
Well, I think it's important that this Miller letter is now becoming a training piece.
Mhm.
And then we can add that to one of the things that was developed this year in terms of ethics education.
Mm-hmm. Right. But I'm glad we had this case today because, I suspected that if we came up with a generic letter, it would be something we could use more often.
So Dee, you're going to take that and edit?
And if I could volunteer Kathleen. Well, why I'm thinking of is that have a person that can help do it in an English perspective because it's new to you. And so if I make some suggestions and say, well, that doesn't make sense, or that doesn't tell me, or, and then again, it makes me do it because there's a second person.
Well, it also a fresh set of eyes,
Mhm.
just to look at it from a reasonable. Sometimes we tend to see the same thing, but we read into stuff because of the history that we're dealing with. So I think a good fresh eyes would be helpful. Eventually, she'll be so jaded she won't be able to be the fresh set of eyes.
Can I get a motion to accept these disclosures, the present economic interest disclosures?
Go ahead.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to accept the economic disclosures. Any opposed? Hearing none, they're approved. Thank you for keeping us in line.
We reserve Dwayne Adams for a follow-up letter as well as John Allen. Got our consent. Follow-up letter sort of in the vein of Mr. Miller's draft letter.
What was that? Yeah.
So
The first one with all the extra stuff.
3-4 pages of.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, we'll approve this because the disclosure's okay, and there's nothing completely beyond the pale about it, but we'll just hold him aside and send him the letter and figure out.
Okay.
But, yeah, I just emailed you a word.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Thank you.
So we don't apparently have any school district employees or board members or any notice of intent to respond to public solicitations. So am I correct in assuming we can move to 5C? We get invited to attend the Assembly Ethics and Elections Committee, and they don't serve lunch, even though it's during lunch hour, in this room. It would be here at noon on the 28th. It's already on the board downstairs. We weren't on the board, but they're on the board. And by the way, it's not unusual for us not to make it to the big board downstairs. That's politics between the security people and the.
Well, and I think because we notice our own meetings, there's probably something like if I want it to show up on the Assembly's featured page, there's a little box that I check. And so I'm wondering if I routed it through upstairs for them to put it on the calendar, maybe it would make it to that calendar. That may be their feature calendar.
And while this is a little off vein,
I got a star on it. I'll work on
yeah,
it.
this is a little off vein, but also keep in mind that when you come here, they have actually their orange bags that they'll put on for parking. I got here early enough, and there probably weren't any on there, but they do, on an infrequent basis, provide park. They'll reserve parking for you.
Do they need to tell the guard that or anything, or will they know?
I told
you
the guard
might-
this time because I got there at 11:15.
Mhm.
So I figured, okay, I'm going to be here until after 1:30. I better let them know. But
So, Bill, you walked over here, right?
Yeah.
Kathleen,
Yeah, I
you
just walked across
Oh,
the
you
street.
just walked. Okay.
You get your own underground parking, or you have
In
to
the
park
garage.
in the garage. They are interesting. Our participation, they're typically, my experience has been, they've been 30 to 45 minutes. You meet with them. They'll have us on the agenda. We do have some amendments that we are proposing. Adding the ombudsman as one, which we'll discuss the amendment, and the amendment regarding the disclosure of present economic interest. In here, but everybody's invited to that meeting. So that would be, what's that, 5C?
The draft amendments are at 5C. And the first one is to add the ombudsman as someone who can bring an advisory opinion to the board. It's pretty simple.
Or was it not just an advisory opinion? I'm sorry, didn't we also ask for them to be able to make when a member of the public didn't want to do it directly because of concerns, they could also bring a potential violation?
And what this gets down to for new board members is that only certain people can file request for advisory opinion, and certain ones can do notification of public violation. And I myself have to look it up every single time. So I'm gonna look it up.
But it's the clerk's office, the attorney's office, any person.
The key, though, is that for advisory opinions, you're only allowed to ask about your own conduct.
Right.
But sometimes there are systemic issues where, the person you really probably should be asking about their conduct doesn't. Right. And so we thought it was wise to allow either the clerk's office or the...
The clerk's office already can. The problem is they're conflicted after they come to the meeting.
Right.
Okay, so anyone can file a notice of potential violation already. So this just has it for advisory, so it basically is just changing it for advisory opinions.
But the advisory, 15080 advisory opinions is a current or former employee. And then this other folks can request written advance advice. Isn't the ombudsman an employee?
Ombudsman work for the assembly, right?
No, but here, the interpretation of this chapter in a particular situation involving the inquirer. So it wouldn't be involving them, I think, is
Oh,
how
I
we're,
see.
we're
I see.
interpreting it, right?
Okay.
Okay.
That was because everyone could give other people the ability to say what should be getting done here. Doesn't necessarily involve my conduct, but what should be getting done. And so
Yeah.
we've been trying to slowly,
Yeah.
clerk's office, Department of Law, in this case the ombudsman, give
Yeah.
other people the ability to say, I see a systemic problem and we need advice from the board, rather than letting it go to the point where a violation actually occurs
Yeah.
and then filing a notice of potential violation.
And this is actually as a result of an advisory opinion that we finally ended up having to give, but it kind of had to go around Robert's, to actually make it happen. We were trying to facilitate, the person that people go to when they have issues like that is the ombudsman.
Mhm.
And to some degree, this was to take your department out of the conflict,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
we ended up having to hire an attorney.
Because I had given the advice
Yeah.
that was then challenged. And I was right. and he
Now,
was wrong.
but
Let the
now,
record reflect.
Let the
Let
record
it
reflect.
It's reflected.
but now with Glinda assisting us, even if you conflict, we wouldn't have to
Mhm.
hire anybody.
That's correct.
And we've gone that route already.
Well, again, even the current violation, I think, is a good one for the administration not to be, not to take the heat on.
Okay, so that was regarding the ombudsman. And the
Yeah, but
other
we
one
can't,
here-
we can't just pass it. You have to say, is this okay to go on to the Assembly Ethics and Elections Commission? As drafted.
What she said.
So moved.
Do we have a second on the?
This is the easier one, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, a lot easier.
Oh, we're just doing the first.
Just the
okay. Oh, I was
ombudsman.
gonna say, whoa, we're moving really fast. Okay, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then Terry second.
Been moved and seconded. Any opposed? Hearing none. The second one involves the issue mostly has to do with the assembly members. Am I remembering this one correctly, Dee?
Yes and no. For instance, first section is municipal employees. I think we wanted to accomplish that everybody has to do these annual disclosure forms. Although,
But it's different for municipal employees because after they it's only ones with an interest, municipal interest,
Mhm.
that have to do the disclosure, and
Okay.
then we want them to know that they need to do that annually. So not every employee has to do it in this disclosure,
Right.
just those with municipal interests.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think through that, how that worked. And I don't know if that didn't involve APOC. And then the next, and by the way, I didn't do this draft, but then the next section, so I don't know who did this draft. Is that you, Lisa?
Mhm.
Then the next section would involve the mayor. And here's something important for new members to understand. Is the mayor, they have this, this code is divided into employees, appointed members, and elected officials. And it says somewhere right at the beginning that the mayor is considered, I believe, an employee unless otherwise stated or something.
It's the
So
other way around.
is it the other way that
It only applies, 025 only applies to the mayor
If-
it's specifically
Okay.
enumerated.
Right. So the mayor is sort of interwoven, and that's because some of the things he does are more similar to or more akin to an employee role, and some are more akin to his role as an elected official. It can be very difficult though to figure all that out, and so this one apparently here the disclosure requirements for the mayor are provided for subsection blah, blah, for elected officials. So it's saying, hey, mayor, in regard to disclosure, he's more like an elected official than an employee,
But the change is what's doing that.
That's what I'm
Because-
saying.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
right? So what were you going to say?
No, I was just saying that the section number, the new section 3,
Yeah.
and the new underlined section would put the mayor over into the elected officials, which,
For purposes of disclosure.
right.
Which probably makes sense because he's an elected official and has APOC and all the other stuff.
And then the other part of that, when you mentioned APOC, is the intent of the municipal clerk's office was to remove APOC from the state requirements from our code. Let APOC be state and let our municipal interest disclosures be our business. So now
Yeah,
with
so see. I was going to say, so if you see this one, this very first thing, additional provisions for municipal employees, and it has the mayor down there, that 3-4 business. So in our current code, the mayor is his disclosure is addressed under employees, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It'd be better addressed under. So that's what this is intended to do, and also to take out reference to APOC. APOC filings are not enough for us because they don't disclose municipal interests. They don't disclose your municipal contracts necessarily, and they're way too long. So we'd rather them file the little one-page document than us looking at APOC. Okay, so that's that first part. So let's see. Then the second part is appointed people. That's your boards and commissions.
that's the H.
So same thing, we want you to do it annually.
And with the appointed officials, it's annually regardless of whether you have municipal interests. You need to do the form like we just did today, and you can say none.
Which I do.
I wonder though, for H, it looks like that restricts the requirement in a pretty substantive way. And H currently now is disclosure of present economic interest. Now it's going to be you only disclose a present economic interest in a municipal contract.
And that's not the intent of that rewrite. And Barbara did catch that. I didn't have time to do her edits. And she thought that just putting after and annually as described in subsection 1, if we put a period and make that a capital A, then we disconnect that.
Okay, I didn't get that.
On page 3 of 6.
Yes, right.
On top of page 3 of 6, if the first sentence, the second sentence, within 30 days of appointment and annually as described in subsection 1, B, we put a period there and start a new sentence with a capital A member of the public appointed to serve on a body of the municipality shall go forth. Then you disconnect. You give them that they shall do this annually
Well, if you
separately.
put a period there, you have a parenthetical phrase without a back. It's not a
Right.
sentence.
Well, I
So
mean,
you
I'd have to
re-
fix that. But if we
rephrase that.
separate
But that's
the
not
two.
the comment Dr. Kelly's making. He's referencing the limitation of interest in municipal contract when you can have interest in a variety of things that are related to the municipality but are not contracts.
Right. And I think it mentions it in the other two by saying in an organization or enterprise engaging in business with the municipality. And so maybe we...
Would the possible solution be to sort of retain the original language that you would be disclosing any economic interest and then to add after that, comma, including in contract with the municipality or organization, so that I think the concern is that right now the rule is you have to disclose any economic interest that could cause a conflict. The way this is written seems to pare that down so that you're only disclosing particular economic interests that would lead to a conflict.
Well, I mean, could you just keep the language as it is and just say within 30 days of appointment and thereafter annually a member of the public appointed to serve on a body of this parish shall file with the municipal clerk, blah, blah, blah. I mean, if the point is just to make sure people are just annually doing it, I don't...
Why do we need to specify a particular contract related to the contract?
Yeah, because interest related to contracts would have to get disclosed under the current guidelines now anyway. But it seems to me that this rewrite, both here and then later, right, you know, what you're disclosing, any economic interest in a contract with the municipality or an organization or enterprise engaged in new business with the municipality. But again, there's all sorts of other ways in which people might have interests that need to be disclosed under the current guidelines that might affect the impartiality of their judgment.
And you're right, before it was an any.
Right.
Now this
Right.
does make it more specific, and I think the reason why that was put in is we were trying to create continuity between the language of the 3 sections, and so the other 2 sections mention these specific things, so we included it there. So it's easy to pull that away, but I think that was just for continuity.
Right.
Maybe you want to pull it out of the other 2 sections and make them any sections.
Well, I think the idea behind H is to get the disclosure once a year, as opposed to the other 2 kind of says what they need to disclose, right?
I think H is actually the substance and the timing. I guess it's what you've done with D.
Well, it is interesting, in the employee section, it does have the qualifier in a municipal contract. In the other one, it doesn't. It has in contract in one section, and then in municipal contracts and business in another. So you're right, they're a little bit inconsistent.
I guess it got down to we were making a few changes, and then all of a sudden it felt like we were doing Band-Aids, and maybe this should be more like a rewrite. And so then that's when we started in with trying to make the sections consistent with each other.
So, you know, the employee section, though, B there, 025B, has a separate disclosure requirement. That's the more general one, right? If you or anyone in your immediate family has a substantial financial or private interest, you shall disclose the narrative form to the designated ethics officer.
Okay, where are you?
025B.
025B.
Oh, B, okay.
Page 5 of 30.
Okay. Right, versus D, which is disclosure
Which
of
in
credit
D just
in a
talks about
municipal
your right
contract.
disclosure of the municipal contract. So there's 2 different disclosure requirements there.
Because B also talks about the municipal employee acting in an official capacity or in official action. Well, I mean, I think we should be careful about significant rewrites because it takes forever to get them through, versus maybe we just address your concern. Because this is sort of in the middle, right? This isn't a significant rewrite. It's just trying to clean up a couple things. So maybe, you know, we just put disclosure of present interest, period, you know, that it doesn't say in a municipal contract. Because it could say in a contract in municipal business.
Right.
I mean, if we wanted to add that in municipal and business, I guess we could do that, or take them both.
I would prefer, to be honest, to keep H mostly the way it is. And if the concern is just to make sure, I mean, H says that people are supposed to file new disclosures as they acquire
New contract.
interests. So I think that sort of covers. I mean, if the idea is to make sure people are like, you know, at least annually disclosing something, I guess I can get behind that. That's not a problem. But one language that you need to add in is just to say within 30 days appointment, and then thereafter annually, and then call it good.
Okay.
And if it's within the municipality and they're bidding on it, then they're required to file a disclosure at that
And
time
there's a whole
anyway.
other disclosure requirement
Yeah.
in that case, and that's right.
Because we review those every once in a while.
Yeah. Okay. Does that give you enough guidance on that one,
Mhm.
Lisa?
Mhm.
Okay, now what
Now
about
that's
the, in
gonna
the,
be-
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you, the middle of paragraph H, the middle whole addition, in a contract with a municipality, again, do you see that as limiting, Terry?
I do, yeah, I would
Okay.
take that out too.
It
I would-
scopes it more than is intended to be scoped.
Well, what about the other 2 sections? Do you want to consider whether it should be limiting in those two sections? For elected and for employee?
And for employees.
Because it's in
Michael?
both.
Yeah, we might want to go back and take a look at this.
Okay.
Although at least for employees, we saw that in 025B, there's a separate disclosure section
Mhm.
that requires them to disclose these kinds of interests generally insofar as it is related to their official action. So I think that's okay.
Yeah, you
But
can
this would be
see
a
the
significant-
difficulty of writing it 3 different ways.
Right.
Every time we have to go through this. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
But-
partly because I think Bill was involved in the initial, our code, right?
I came in just after the new code came online.
Oh, okay. So you weren't involved, he wasn't, so we're not, he's not
We can't blame him,
responsible for
I
it,
know.
yeah.
He's not one of the framers.
The way it reads now is, within 30 days of appointment, a member of the public appointed to serve on a public body shall file with the municipal clerk a written statement in the form prescribed by the clerk disclosing any economic interest which shall cause the official to have a personal or financial interest in the decisions of the public body on which the member serves, different than those of the public generally. That's really broad relative to what's here in this draft. This goes considerably.
And you all are saying you would rather go with the broad.
At least for right now, I'd rather stick
Mhm.
with if we're gonna. This is to me this is a pretty substantial change to this particular requirement, and maybe we want to do it, maybe we don't, but I'd have to think about it for a little bit.
And am I right in the purpose behind this was to put into code that we want the assembly members to give us a disclosure,
Right.
as opposed to making us watch the APOC
APOC.
things?
And we wanted the mayor, that was the second
Okay.
piece, to be as part of an elected official. And we wanted to make it clearer that there was an annual disclosure because that got lost somewhere down in filing, kind of thing,
Right.
so.
I have to admit, I do like the idea of the broader disclosure. Not living out, particularly if we're going to start doing Bill's suggestion of sending these disclosures back to the chair, the commissioner, or the board. It would be helpful for a board or commission to actually know the broad economic interest that might create conflicts for its members.
And like I said, it was a move that was made for consistency because the question was, why are these people having to do this? And then these people have to do all of this. Shouldn't it be equal across the board? So maybe it should be equal across the board that it's broader.
It might be, but remember, there is a reason why it's 3 different sections, right? That,
Mhm.
kind of like responsibilities and demands of employees, board members, and elected officials are different. And there might be some reasonable differences in the disclosure requirements and things like that.
Now, is there not another way that we can handle this by issuing our own advisory opinion
To
to the assembly, to the mayor's office, to, this is how you shall handle this in the future?
well, actually, it brings up an interesting point. Is the administration has the procedures and policies, the P&Ps, and our current ethics P&P simply restates 80% of the code, which I've never known why we do that. It's already in code. It would, I think, eliminating that P&P and maybe putting this kind of Miller letter, this kind of stuff to the employees is a good idea. Because the mayor can't direct the assembly to do that kind of thing. So, so maybe I'm confusing this more than necessary.
But I'm just wondering if another, rather than a code rewrite on this particular section, what we're trying to get at is 2 specific things. And if we, through an advisory opinion, gave direction to those people on that, in fact, we sort of did earlier.
Oh, to the assembly?
Yes, to the assembly and to the mayor's office. This is how we would prefer you handle your economic disclosure.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say P&Ps are directed only to the employees, to the administrative staff, not necessarily to the assembly.
And my thought on what you're saying is then you're taking yourself out of the controller seat. You all are the ones that are in the trenches working with this code when you're trying to, do your duties, and then the code is, sending you in circles. This is one of those things where you can, nip and tuck and take care of something that's impeding you. But if you send it to somebody else, they're not necessarily going to know that, gee, we come up against this every single time. And if this was here.
Your point is taken, and I'm not disagreeing. It's just that we can do something relatively quickly, as opposed to, it sounds like obviously we're not going to bring up this at the meeting on the 28th. Because we won't have a draft that we can discuss and approve prior to that. Not that we would have the other thing ready by then either, but it'd be a little easier for us to come up with something that says, this is how we want you to handle this.
Well, there's two ways to look at that. You can get a best draft, send it to them, because they're going to work on it too. You know what I mean? It's not like it may not go, verbatim the way you send it to them. And then it becomes something on their table. And then I assume and I hope that then they would push it back to you and go, hey, what do you think this is? It begins the process of working on it collaboratively.
Well, I was going to say, I think we can solve your concern, Dr. Kelly's concern, in H by just taking out in the first line the intermunicipal contract, and the three-line addition in the middle of the paragraph. And it leaves the thought process sort of intact there, which shall cause the official to have a personal or financial interest in the decisions of the public body. Isn't that the overall general? And then similarly in K, this is elected officials, take out the, after disclosure of present economic interest, take out in a municipal contract. Because in fact in 1, you have disclosure of present economic interest shall include any economic interest in a contract or an organization or the enterprise. So it's much broader, number 1. It's much broader.
I think that's the solution. If that is the solution, I have a question on 35K4, on page 4 and 6.
Okay.
This is a totally different thought. Did you have some specific reason for addressing people serving on service area board?
This was the Steve Strom edition. Do you
Number
remember
4.
D?
Yeah.
Well, that was because if you don't have to. The issue was if you don't spend a certain amount of dollars, you're not required to file an APOC filing. Is that correct?
No, so are we talking about number 4?
Yeah.
That they, I think the reason for that was simply because the service boards meet irregularly. They're not monthly meetings. And so it's easy enough for us to say, hey, everybody, new board members have to do it in January, when annually. But the LRSA board, some of them are elected in April.
So it's a timing.
It's a timing issue, and then they don't meet again until September, because that's when they select the contractor to do their roads. But we wanted to make it clear that, okay, really, probably the annual timing requirement doesn't work for you guys, but before you do anything, before you hire your wife to be the contractor, you have to tell us. So it was just a simple timing interest, because the LRSAs don't meet like the other boards and commissions, and some of the LRSA people are elected; they're not all appointed. Although I think there's going to be legislation to try to do away with that,
Do the elections or the appointments?
the elections.
So the general rule is that anyone who is assuming office has 30 days to do this, and then they have to do it annually. And the special rule for service area boards is they're going to do it 30 days before and annually, but also.
Well, it's intended as an alternative, I think. I think you're right, Bill. It's intended as an alternative, not an also.
Is it D? Is it that they have to submit it before they participate in any?
Yeah, versus the 30 days.
Versus the 30 days,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So
the
you could
before.
so you could have. You're still
So-
in your 30-day grace period, but you're showing up at meetings, making decisions, supporting your own contracting company that they contracted a year.
Well, no, but you're generally not going to make that decision within 30 days. And I think it's the other way, too. We're saying, we understand that you might not meet the 30-day thing. Is that what we're saying? If they get what's confusing is because they're appointed and elected. If they're elected in April, then it's annual. I think we wanted for LRSAs really almost to let them But see, again, between election and appointed, that,
So can I ask, I don't have that much familiarity with service area boards, and so the people who are serving on the service area boards are members of the public and elected officials.
they can be. LRSA, some of them are appointed by the mayor, and some of them are elected. And I have a feeling that goes way back into politics. But then it also, as a practical matter, it's hard to get people to volunteer to be a board member. So getting someone to run for an election is very problematic. I mean, it's usually your three strongest neighbors that get together and force someone to run for the board.
So there was a concern that if I'm elected to the assembly in April and I first serve on the service board in February of the next year, I wouldn't have to do any disclosures related to that.
Well, you should do the minute you're within 30 days
right?
of
So-
being. But I think what the administration that handled the LRSA board say is that that's really unrealistic because they get elected, then it's summertime, they're all off, they're all retirees, and they don't get back together again until September, until they have to pick that contractor. That, in other words, we were trying to enforce a rule that couldn't work.
Could it be as simple as stating within 30 days or before participating, whichever comes first? Or does that not solve anything?
Well, that's probably good. That's probably what we should be doing anyway, to be honest. It probably should be the case that people on boards and commissions are disclosing before, filing
So
those disclosures before they're actually taking official action as a member of their board. And we should say, look, it's at least 30 days if you haven't met, but if you're meeting in the meantime, well, you really should disclose it before you're taking official action. That's probably I think that's a sensible requirement.
Is there any reason to have a special rule for service area boards as opposed to all the rest of the
Yeah,
boards?
it's easy.
Well, because they're often elected in April versus everybody else is, well, that's not true, you're all appointed at different times, right?
Yeah, if we think of it that way, it's a rule that would just apply generally. I mean, in other words, what we're just changing is
Mm-hmm.
right now everyone has that 30-day grace period to get it in. And what we could just do is for everyone who's on boards and commissions, we could say it needs to be either 30 days or before you take any official action.
Oh, I wouldn't want to do that to everybody, because we don't want to be policing what official action is. So I think the 30-day rule is a good one. But maybe we add, and in no event shall elected officials to service area boards participate in any business service before. I mean, if we want to recognize them as a difficult group to get to comply.
And this only covers the elected officials.
Elected
Not
ones,
the appointed
not the
ones
appointed
that
ones.
can be
Right,
operating
easily monitored.
separately.
And-
They're not referenced.
And we've made such a big deal of this, I think in fact there'll be incredibly more compliance in the future anyway.
Well, if we work out the language for this for elected officials to service area boards, we could add another item to appointed that reads the same.
Because you've got a disconnect.
For appointed.
You've got special language for the service area boards for elected, but you don't have corresponding language for the appointed. And
appointed.
if the boards can be hybrids, then you've got two different individuals on the same board doing two different things. And that's what we really don't want to have.
Well,
Just
let me.
for my part, I'm still not sure I understand why there's a special rule for service area boards at all.
Was this on the heels of the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of our
Yeah.
violation one.
Yeah.
Probably because the staff person to the LRSA boards who does all that just said, I can't possibly get them to all comply within 30 days of election or appointment. Well, I think the elected thing took longer too, because although we have our own elected officials have to do it anyway, it was like you get elected and then you get certified, and there were all these subsequent deadlines in the process. And this, I think, Bill, reflects sort of just a final safety, and we mean at LRSA boards, you can't do anything till you get these forms in. But is it a special rule?
Well, so what if it is?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's the harm in if it is? You're singling out a particular board because they've been a little non-compliant historically. Is that problematic enough to not do it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess the way it's written now, everybody, including them, has 30 days. unless you put forward, just reverse the wording of it, is that they may not participate before they file a disclosure. They're one of the few boards too, maybe Bill lists it too, is they're one of the few boards that has a budget, that they in fact have control over money, direct control. Most of the other boards are advisory and make recommendations, and this group in fact, they have access to budgets.
The clerk's office has made it very clear to the staff of every one of these that those forms are required at the first next meeting that they attend. With all of the committees, not just the LRSs.
Not all. We've taken care of our department, Assembly Department. We're working on LRSA boards, got a really good show for that, and we haven't gone to municipal boards yet.
Okay.
That's a new territory for this year.
And I'll tell you, I don't think that'll be difficult. They have a new person for the municipal boards. It's not Karen anymore.
Upstairs?
It's Stephanie, and I
Okay.
think she's very diligent. And I would imagine that we just need to present this to her and say, "Look, you need to get the staffers to do this." And I don't even think all boards and commissions have a staff. I'm not even sure that that's true. The assembly provides support. I'm not sure all the other. For instance, I'm theoretically the board attorney for the Board of Equalization, and I never go to their stuff. I go to their training session.
Shirking your duties.
So
It's more fun.
much more fun. Tax assessment appeals. So I'm not sure the level of support in the mayoral boards and commissions. But that's not to say that the administration can't find someone to go to the first meeting of all these boards in January and get it done.
So, wait, cursory look at this, is that the elected officials to a service area board are held to a different standard than the public members that are appointed to the board as far as,
Public appointed.
making disclosures?
I think de facto that's what this does, with the assumption that in fact the appointed ones, because they come through the appointment system, will have filed these things. Of course, that's an assumption.
But like we discussed, we can add that.
Right. It either needs to, I guess, either all go or be duplicated in both sections, because I do think you could have a disconnect between, we have one board and you have individuals appointed, individuals elected, and maybe different reporting requirements apply.
How about if we do this? How about if I invite the staff person for the why don't we invite both of them? Let's invite whenever it is the new boards and commissions person for the administration, the mayor. I mean, there's like 30 of them, and find out what she's doing and tell her what our interests are. Stephanie McSwain is her name. And then also invite the person for LRSA, the LRSA boards, which is Teresa, I'm not sure of her last name. And she was on a really, Williams went through a very long conversation with me about why annual January would not work, or within 30 days. So maybe she can enlighten us, she can explain that to us. So how about if we invite both those people to our next meeting?
And then how about I try to make the change you want me to make,
Mhm.
and we bring that back, and we just take the ombudsman to the Assembly Committee.
That
sounds good.
should be a slam dunk for them.
Yeah, and they're aware of that one, I
Yeah.
think. Okay.
Chairman King, just to remind you, my 1:30 expiration date is fairly near.
I understand that, Chair Emeritus, and we do have 5 minutes to go.
I have young people back at the university waiting for my wisdom.
Yes. So let me get back to our agenda.
And who is going to come and speak about that at the Ethics and Elections Committee? Who is going to speak to the topic of the ombudsman?
Send me the invite, I'll be
It'll
there.
be you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That one is real easy.
Okay. Oh, these two next two are really easy. Well, maybe not. D and E were the two work sessions that you wanted to schedule. One was a work session on rewriting political activity. The second was a work session on rewriting the process for resolution for the notices of potential violation. So, the only reason why these are here is to schedule a time to meet for a work session. So
Okay.
you can either say, I don't want to do that now, or you can say, this, here's the time.
Can I say, I think the political activity is badly timed now with the mayoral election coming up. That it's probably not the time to change code as to definitions of political activity and what you can and cannot do.
And this is just a work session though.
Well, I know, but we don't know who's going to be elected in April, number one. But I think it's better to do after this election cycle is done, especially we're 2 months away. Let's get it done, and then maybe start anew next summer, next fall, and then we have a whole administration to work through on this.
Okay.
So at least the political activity one take out. When
Well,
it's
both these are political activities.
No, the second one is a notice of potential violation. D is all political activity.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I'm not.
And then E is the reworking that process for the notice of potential violation. Which Terry's done a lot of work. He did his homework, but it would just be a work session to knock it out.
a work session with us, right? Not with
The
the
board work session.
Oh, just our group.
Yeah, nobody else.
So forces us to go through the whole process.
Yeah.
I think that's a great
Yeah,
idea.
if you look up at E, I took the old document and sort of incorporated sort of the best practices that we've been, well, the E practices that we've been doing for the last few years. And I tried to lay out two documents. The first one would be sort of like ours, right? So it'd be sort of like what we would refer to in these, is everyone there? 5E?
5E.
And then the second one, I should have done a little bit better. The second one is what I'm envisioning is something that we send to the respondent of notices of potential violation, so they know the process and they know what's going on. We've had some concerns in the past that, if the respondent actually understood the process and what their rights were. And
You
things like
just
that.
couldn't avoid this, huh? Epistemic. What is EPISTE?
Epistemic?
Epistemic.
What do you mean?
We quite often get
Cock.
mouthful words here. that-
We're often
Oh,
rife with these.
epistemic.
Oh, you like the one at the bottom? The
These
instigate
expressions.
The probable truth value is 12.5.
That's good. I like that.
So this is good. This is something that we can work on. We can take a couple hours and
It'd be nice
finalize
to
this.
have this all hammered out, because within this process, there's a couple things that we do it sometimes, we don't do it sometimes, and it would be
Yeah.
really nice to sort of have a discussion about what we think the best way to do it is, and say, boom,
Okay.
here's the standard procedure. So, because sometimes when we go several months without one of these, there's a little bit of kind of like, what were we doing, and how did we do that, and
Is this the kind of thing that would form the basis of what you call the EMDs for policies and?
It could. It
It
could.
seems like this is a sort of step down from the code that.
Right.
the administrative
Well, this is
regulations-
almost like regulations, interesting
Right.
enough.
Right.
So does anybody have a suggested time for this?
Well, and in terms of time, we need to go over, not today, because now we're really not going to have a quorum in a second.
The draft.
The draft, and I think that's really a timely issue. We need to get that out. So I would suggest maybe a special meeting with the quorum of that group, and to plan that sooner than later, because that really does need to get done. And
Okay.
you want to do that next Wednesday?
Yes, we can. We'll notify. You're talking about this meeting on your draft.
Strictly on that
Yeah, just
issue.
on
that
Yeah.
issue only.
So that would excuse the two of you
That's
from that
the
meeting.
21st.
Although, do we think we can hammer that out in? Did you read it, Dr. Kelly? Or,
Yeah, I did. It was not very good.
and actually, I
That
like
was
it.
out loud.
Yeah.
That was out loud.
The internal editor problem. I tried to hit this, I did not get a chance to read it.
Okay, so you can't
I'm sure
comment
it's-
on it.
In fact, I moved to approve it.
I did read it and I didn't have any issues, but,
Okay.
so we can go forward, but I'm wondering if we started that, maybe the three of us could hammer that out in 30 minutes, and then if they joined us at noon, possibly, and then we could spend the next hour and a half on the other thing?
I can't imagine it won't take more than 30 minutes. I also thought it was pretty straightforward, but and the other thing is, should we contact David and find out if he's likely to be available next
Oh, gosh,
Wednesday.
that's right, yeah, 'cause
Right.
Well, I understand that.
Right.
So that was contingent upon David being available.
Yes.
As long as we say tentatively, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we say tentatively for next week? If David can't make it, why don't we meet with the new board members and work on the notice of potential violation process and whatever other work we can get to in the meantime.
So if we do
You can see
11:30,
that we met 24 times last year, right?
if we do 11:30 to 1:30, then the new board will show up at 12, and then that way, if David can't show up, then we're just shaving off that front 30 minutes, and then we have from 12 to 1:30 to work on the other.
Which should be plenty of time to hammer out.
Well-
It is important to understand this procedures because it gets kind of complicated
Well,
on
I was going to say, I mean, people sign up to do sign up to a time commitment of about once a month, and of course, sometimes that increases. Is this the type of issue that really merits asking people to double their time commitment?
Oh yeah, sorry, we didn't even ask you guys to do that. That is okay. We're gonna see what we fall into. Well, what do you guys think? Is this?
Well,
to be honest, my feeling is that it sort of is only for the following reason. This is the classic kind of thing that until we set a specific sub-meeting for it,
Mhm.
it never gets taken care of.
Right,
This
no.
has been sitting in the
For
back
8
of this
months,
binder
easy.
for almost
For a
year.
year,
Yeah.
over a year.
But you guys are new, and what's your sense about your schedule?
well, maybe in 2 weeks. How about that? And then Dave's more likely to be available, maybe.
Sorry, which one are we lost track of?
We were talking
5E.
about whether or not it's okay to set a meeting for, just set a meeting and then ask if you want to
Yeah,
attend.
it's
Yeah.
5E, right? Kind of go through if that's worth having a
Well,
meeting.
I'm willing to do that whenever. I feel like that's a good refresher on what the process is. I mean, it's actually not a bad follow-on to the orientation.
Because the process is, there is definitely a procedure that we follow, but it's important that I think that we codify it.
Well, and I do think that new eyes will really help on
Yeah.
that one, because the code as written now is, you can point out the more baffling points even more quickly than we probably are so used
Is
to.
it possible to get this emailed out to us, the board
Yes.
version, so we can?
Mhm.
And then compare it to, on that index I gave you, the process for notice of violations.
Yeah, which is at the end of the code. It's like,
So they can take their code books
You
with
can
them?
you can always take your code books with you, but then you have to remember to bring them back to reference in here. Although maybe I'll make a bunch of extra ones just in case.
yeah, at least I don't know. Yeah, and so so part of it is like trying to distill what is the process from the code. Part of it's including the practices that we've been doing. So some stuff that we've been doing isn't really in the code, but it really makes sense to do it that way. And so, like for instance, Keith gets the vote 3 times for every. It's just.
I was following the practice that you set.
So what do you guys think? 2 weeks then? Is 2 weeks reasonable?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, there's a meeting.
You
in
didn't say
this
2
room.
weeks. You said 1 week.
Right.
So
Well,
that
and then I suggested 2
Oh.
weeks, but
Yeah.
In 2
But
weeks,
that
there is a
meeting-
meeting
That's the ethics
in
and
this room,
elections.
and what day was that? Was that also on the
28th, yeah.
28th? And that's from 12 to 1.
Is that the?
well, we just would find another place to meet. We could meet up in legal.
But then you won't get to be at this meeting.
Well, that's a 5-minute meeting. I mean, really, don't you think, the ombudsman portion of it?
Well, that should, I should be able to get it done in 5 minutes.
Well, we can ask them to put you on the agenda first or something.
Well, that's, and you were going to be our representative anyway, right? We really don't need you for this kind of stuff. You're the chair. You don't get to participate. Right?
Yeah, right. If that's what you guys want to meet, in 2 weeks, that's fine.
Well,
That
I don't
works
mind
better
meeting.
for
I
everybody's
don't
schedule.
mind meeting next week, but my schedule, is a lot more flexible than people with real jobs. So
Thank you for
It's 2
acknowledging
weeks.
that you're public.
it's the policing of America.
Yeah.
Is 2 weeks better for you guys?
It makes no difference to me. One next week.
Either one.
Either one.
Well, from a time management, it's better to do it next week because it's not overlapping that. But
All right.
next time, say knock it off once a month.
Okay, 21st.
Okay.
Okay. Very good.
Tori, you better go.
Yeah, I have to go too, I think.
And
These
let's
got
do
meetings
an
to go to,
adjournment, because
so
we don't have a quorum for the
do we
rest
ha-
of it anyway.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Thank you. The move to adjourn, and we are adjourned.